All right, so a topic on the GED test will definitely involve polynomials. So today's lesson, we're going to go through what they are, some terminology, and then we're also going to learn how to add and subtract polynomials. In our next lesson, we'll learn how to multiply and divide. So what they are, the term polynomial comes from the word, the prefix poly, meaning many, and nomial in this case meaning terms. So basically, polynomial just means many terms. So a term is a single number, variable, or a combination of the two being multiplied or divided together. So, for example, just a single number, any number under the sun. So 5, or a half, or a -7/8. Those are all just considered plain numbers. Variable, we can have x, y, z. A variable is really just an unknown, and typically variables are notated by a letter. Typically, when we start getting into a lot of this algebra, it'll be x, y, or z, but it really can be any letter. And it says, or a term can be a combination of the two being multiplied or divided. So another example of a term would be 5x. Just this number 5 being multiplied with x. Another way to view this is like you have 5 x's, okay? Or I could have 5xy. Those are all being attached by multiplication, so it's considered a term. Like I added here, it can also be divided. So I can have x divided by 100. That's still considered a term because it's attached by that division. Okay, that operation that's happening between these two terms is division. A little more specifically into a polynomial, polynomials can have constants, which is a whole number. Well, not a whole number, any kind of number. Could be a fraction also, positive or negative. Variables, we just talked about variables are just letters. So x, y, z, any letter in the alphabet. But in order to be a polynomial, the variable can't live in the denominator. So if I had something like this, 5 divided by x, just by definition, this is not a polynomial. Doesn't mean mathematically that this isn't an expression, but it's just not a polynomial by definition. Polynomials can also have exponents, but those exponents can only be positive whole numbers. So if I had something like 5x squared, that's okay because my exponent here is a positive whole number. If I had 5x to the -1, this is a little bit review of exponents weeks ago now, but this x to the -1, remember using our law of exponents really means 1 over x. So 5x to the -1, we could just put the 5 in front here. This is really the same as 5 over x, which we just talked about here is not a polynomial. And polynomials then, if you have constants, variables, combination of the two being multiplied or divided, as long as the variable is not in the denominator, and polynomials can have exponents that are only positive whole numbers, all those conditions can then be combined using any operation. So add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Okay? So we're just going to go through a couple examples of what's a polynomial and what's not, just by sight. So I'm just going to make one up here. If I have a third x to the 4th plus 5. So a third x to the 4th plus 5. I have a constant. I have an exponent that's a positive number. This is also considered a constant. Just because it's not a whole number doesn't mean that's not okay. So this is a polynomial. This is okay. If I had 5 over x plus 10. So hopefully you notice there's a problem here with x in the denominator. We cannot have variables in the denominator, so this is not, I'll just say no, that is not a polynomial. If I have x to the 4th, y to the 5th, z to the -10, say. So this is legit positive whole number, positive whole number. This is a negative exponent, so this is not a polynomial. Okay? We're going to get into more of what normal polynomials look like here in a minute, But this is just big idea of what polynomials are. Okay. Let's go down to more specific terms. So we have these three terms: a monomial, binomial, and trinomial. So a monomial is a polynomial with one term. Okay, so this prefix mo you could think of as a prefix meaning one. So an example of a monomial could be 5x or 100x squared. Okay, they're all these separate terms are attached here. In this case, this is one term, but the pieces of it are attached by multiplication, and that's okay, like we talked about in the beginning. If I have a binomial, this prefix bi meaning two, just like a bicycle, right? Polynomials with two terms. So the terms, you might want to take a note of this, your terms are separated by addition or subtraction. Okay. Terms are separated by addition or subtraction. So if I had 6x plus 3, that's an example of a binomial, because I have one term here and one here. Okay. Or if I had xy cubed minus 5x, I have a term here and a term here. And those terms are really separated by that addition or subtraction. So these are just two separate cases of what a binomial is. A trinomial, just like a tricycle, right? A trinomial is a polynomial with three terms. So we can have 6x squared plus 4x minus 10. I have 1, 2, 3 terms involved there. So that just by definition is called a trinomial. If a polynomial has more than 1, 2, or 3 terms, then it's just called exactly that, a polynomial. These are just ones that are used more often, so they have special names.